Hi, nonfiction friends. It's Kirsten again with another episode of Anatomy of a Nonfiction Picture Book. I have been meaning to record this post for eons, and I apologize that it's taken me so long to get to it. But I've really been wanting to talk about this book for a long time. So, about a month ago, there was a great discussion on Twitter led by agent Clelia Gore, and she was talking about how picture book biographies in particular have become a very saturated market in which she says she considers the market to be overbought. And as somebody who writes in the nonfiction um, picture book biography market space, I would say it's definitely becoming harder to sell a straight narrative picture book biography. So, what I'm experiencing and what Clelia was pointing out was that you need to come up with something really unique to offer in the marketplace. So, specifically, and I'm going to read Clelia's tweet here, she says she thinks there are three types of picture book biographies that she could sell right now. One is told completely from the perspective of the person's childhood before they did whatever made them famous. The second would be a picture book biography that's told in a really unconventional manner. So she cites as an example Iridescence of Birds by Patricia McLaughlin, which is about Matisse. And that book is written in second person, and it's pretty much just one long poem. It's more of a poem than a picture book. So that's, that has a really creative and experimental format, as she points out, and she thinks that would sell. The third thing would be picture book hybrids that combine not only the narrative of the story of the person who created or did something famous, but also the story of whatever it is that they created or whatever it is that they are known for. So, of course, when I saw this tweet, I thought of one of my favorite picture book biographies of the year by Hannah Holt. It's from Balzer and Bray. It's called The Diamond and the Boy. And in fact, this book was recently named by the Reading for Research blog as one of the top mentor texts of the year. So I thought, you know what, I've got to weigh in on this book before the year is out. So from a craft perspective, this hits a lot of the things that Clelia talks about. So we'll talk about them real briefly. So overall, and this is probably the feedback that I give the most when I'm doing critiques. I do a lot of critiquing in the 12 by 12 picture book group, is to play with your structure, right? Don't get, there are publishers who will buy a cradle to grave picture book biography told mostly in paragraphs, but those are becoming more and more difficult sells in my opinion. So in order to really make your picture book biography stand out, you have to play with your structure. So here is the amazing thing that Hannah did with this book. So her book is a side-by-side biography of her grandfather, Tracy Hall, who invented a process for manufacturing diamonds. And what we see is each spread is split. So one side tells the story of the boy named Tracy becoming a man and his journey. The other half of the spread tells the story of graphite and its journey to become a diamond. So Hannah doesn't even stop there. What she also does is she joins their stories using a lot of the same language. So Tracy is described as small, ashen, meager, down, down, down by a creek, and graphite is described as small, gray, meager, down, down, down in the earth, waiting centuries for the right time to shine. So what you find on each spread is the connection between their process. Heat blows through the air vent at school. Heat seeps through the Earth's mantle where continents collide. So in each spread, there's a connection. And for kids who like life stories, Tracy's story will appeal to them. For kids who like more expository or informational fiction, descriptions of how things happen, they will be interested to read the geologic process of how a diamond is formed. So again, each page, that connection, pressure, right, is a vice. So that's the first thing, structure-wise, that I think makes this really, really, really interesting. And I believe, because I've done a post previously for the Summit Club blog, when Hannah first envisioned this book before it was bought by Balzer and Bray, she actually had described it in her query letter as a turn and flip. So Tracy's story would go one way, and then you would flip the book over and read back to front, and that would be Graphite's story, and they would sort of join in the middle. Obviously, there were editorial decisions made to go with sort of interweaving pages telling the story so that you got both stories on each spread. So that's one thing that makes this book amazing. The other thing that piece of advice that I give frequently that I think Hannah does so well is I try to tell people to think of picture book biographies as poetry, not paragraphs. So it's real easy if you come from a background of writing research papers or essays, and you enjoy that kind of work, journalism even. It's really easy to think about, I have to write the story in complete paragraphs and complete sentences. But what I try to tell people is think about your picture book as poetry instead of paragraphs. And that really helps decrease your word count, because we do want to try to keep our word count down increasingly, even though picture book biographies can skew longer, 800 to 1,000 words, and sometimes even longer. We do really want to use our words to our advantage. So Hannah does this, and in fact, she's written so lyrically, and you can see the way that the words are kind of laid out like a poem. She also uses extremely descriptive language. I love this. Heat seeps through the Earth's mantle where continents collide, right? That's great alliteration. Making the rock bend, sweat, weep, right? So her language is just beautifully descriptive. It's not rhyming, but it's very lyrical language, told much like a poem. So if this book does go to Tracy's adult life, so it's not a snapshot of just his childhood, but this is one way, and I know Hannah wrote this book many, many ways before this version actually sold to Balzer and Bray, but this is one way that you can play and get really creative with nonfiction. And in fact, I think, for me personally, this is really the joy of nonfiction writing right now, is that we're being forced to get experimental and we're getting forced to get creative. So anyway, I would encourage you to check out this book. It is a great mentor text. And think about playing with your structure and with your language, and think poetry, not paragraphs. All right, have a good one.